Hello, my name is Tim Lang. I'm Professor Emeritus of Food Policy at the Centre for Food Policy at City University of London. I'm wanting to introduce an idea that's been bubbling up for a long time, and that the UN Food Systems Summit ought to be an occasion to address, but really what matters is what happens afterwards. And it's this, it's a very simple idea. Compared to the post-Second World War reconstruction of the food system, which basically said we need more food and cheaper, and it unleashed essentially the next 50 years, still going on, intensification of food production, which we now know are the problems of environment and inequalities and things. Now we know what a food system needs, if it's to be good, is to tick lots of boxes. We mustn't trade off environment for health or social justice and labour rights for cheapness. We've got to have all of the criteria which the world needs to address in its food system addressed at the same time. It's got to be multiple action at multiple levels across multiple sectors, from production to consumption. At one level, you could just say, give it to consumers on a label. 15 years ago, when colleagues and I started working on could we do an Omni label, as we called it, it was too difficult. It met resistance. People didn't like it. The consumers liked it, but the industry didn't like it. And big vested interests said, no, it's too difficult, etc. 15 years later, the world is awash with apps and software designers and graphic designers. And indeed, the data are there now to a level of complexity and scientific consensus that was unimaginable 15 years ago. We've got to, in other words, address this omni problem, the Latin word for everything. All things, all criteria, or in academia, we call it a multi-criteria approach. We've got to do that in a way that translate the complexity into simplicity. And we need a shared framework to deliver that. From the Food Summit, the Food Systems Summit, we ought to get commitments to do that. The Food Systems Summit has got potential to do some things, but around and from the summit and the energies that come together in these sort of big global meetings. And some of those energies are critical and say this is wrong, or there's big business, or this interest or that interest is dominating. But somehow, a common position, a consensus position about the public good, the public health or ecological public health, a good sustainable food system, sustainable diets for all, something that pulls together a common framework for addressing the processes of coming to that consensus has got to start. It's what the UN should do, but sometimes it becomes the problem itself. So my plea is that wherever you are, whichever interest you're in, you begin to engage beyond your box. We've got to join up the boxes, join up the issues, join up the sectoral interests. There's no good just saying cheap food is good, even if it crushes poor workers or drives people into poverty. There's no good saying, well, here's good, environmentally sound, good low carbon food if it means taking the food out of the mouths of others. We've got to join up in some sort of omni framework. So the plea is to support development of processes of coming to some sort of mid-20th century, mid-21st century new rationality about the food system. And it's what people like me call an omni approach, an omni process. So please go for it.